Welcome to Childcare Rockstar Radio. I am your host, Kris Murray. Childcare leaders around the globe are breaking through challenges, leading the way in innovation, testing new best practices, and impacting children and families in a much more powerful and positive way than ever before. Each week, join me for interviews with early childhood leaders and experts that will leave you inspired to become the next childcare rockstar. Now, let's go. This is Childcare Rockstar Radio, episode 181, featuring Militza Mezquita. Hey folks, welcome back to the podcast. I'm thrilled that you're here with me again, and I've got a little bit of a different episode today. Militza Mezquita is a senior advisor with Save the Children. You may or may not have heard of this very important and cool organization, and today you're going to learn all about it. Save the Children has been around for over 100 years, and they are the primary organization in the United States helping childcare centers with emergency preparedness and resources and funding. And you're going to learn about little known funding facts for helping you come back after an emergency, whether you have a weather event or some other disaster related event. You have access to funding even if you're a for-profit. So we're going to talk all about that. And so stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this episode. I want to thank our friends over at CCEI, who are the folks sponsoring this episode. And they want you to know that if your child development associate credential is not up to date, they can help you over at CCEI, Childcare Education Institute. This back to school season, they're on a mission to help educators just like you renew your CDA credential in an easy, convenient, and engaging way. And of course, all the folks that work for you, that are your teachers and educators that have CDAs. When you renew or earn your CDA with CCEI, you'll enjoy 24/7 access to online courses, unlimited guidance and support from a dedicated education coach, and help with your portfolio submission. But that's not all. For the month of July, CCEI is also giving Childcare Rockstar Radio listeners $100 off of their CDA renewal. So all you have to do is visit cceionline.com and use the code CDA Renewal 24 to get started today. That's the code CDA Renewal 24 and get $100 off your CDA renewal. So thanks, CCEI. Thanks for being a partner of our show, and we really, really appreciate you. So here in the midst of summer, I hope that you're doing great. And we've been reaching out and talking to many of you about your business and what's going on here in the middle of 2024. We are over halfway through the year, and I always say this is a great time for you to look at your goals and the things that you wanted to accomplish in your business here in 2024. Look at your resolutions from January and think about where you want to be coming up in the fall with your school, and really start putting pen to paper again to craft those strategic plans and working with your team and your leadership teams to implement and develop new best practices and go after your implementation here as we slide towards the fall enrollment season. So if you need help with any of that, we've got coaches standing by to meet with you on a complimentary 45-minute laser coaching call. And you can learn more about that at fixmyschool.com. So pop on over there and click the button and get on our calendars, and we would love to help you, whether you're starting your first location or you own up to 10 or 15, even 20 locations. We are here for you to help. This episode is very cool. I did not know about Save the Children. I did not know that they've been around for so long. We talk about the history of the organization, and we talk about how to have emergency preparedness embedded into your business plan. This is something that you got to have, and you need to have it up to date. Be looking at it, dust it off, refresh it, and work with your team, train them on it, and make sure that everybody in your organization knows what will happen if you face a weather event or some other emergency. We learn about something called the Gulf Coast Resilience Network. And so if you live anywhere along the Gulf Coast, you're definitely going to want to listen to this episode. And even if you don't, they have Save the Children has helped in all 50 states, even Hawaii during their Maui fires. And they're available to all childcare centers, no matter your size and no matter if you're for-profit, non-for-profit, or a government-funded agency or a school. So with that, we're going to dive in and meet Militza Mezquita here on the podcast. I hope that you guys take this to heart, jot down some notes, some writer-downers that are revealed in this episode, really cool little-known secrets about funding, your build-up after a natural disaster. We also talk about relocation. So what will happen if you face a flood or a fire or a hurricane or a tornado or some other event, and you need to relocate all your families to a temporary structure until you can get your remodel done and get back up and running. So we talk about all about that as well. So enjoy this episode, and thanks for being with me. Thanks for continuing to watch on the YouTube channel or listen in on the podcast platform of your choice, and I appreciate you. All right, let's dive in and meet Militza Mezquita from Save the Children. Let's go. Welcome, folks, to another episode of Childcare Rockstar Radio. I'm really excited for this one. With me today, I have Militza Mezquita from Save the Children. Militza, how are you today?
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for taking the time to join me. Where are you right now, geographically?
I am in Alvin, Texas, which is about 20 minutes south of Houston proper.
Woo, it's steamy there right now.
Very hot.
I just flew through Houston a couple days ago on my way back from Costa Rica, and it was 99 degrees and quite humid. So yeah, you're mostly inside right now, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Save the Children. What is the work that you guys do, and what is your mission?
Absolutely. So Save the Children's been around for over 100 years internationally and domestically. And domestically, we've been in the U.S. for, I think, almost close to like 132 years. We've been here a long time. And our signature programs in the U.S. really focuses on education and making sure children are reading at grade level proficiency, having the healthy supports they need from 0 to 5, making sure they're kindergarten ready, but most importantly, really looking at how we can support children in emergencies. And so we've been working in the emergency space since 2005's Hurricane Katrina, making sure that childcare has what they need to get back up and going. And so really we've spent a lot of time in the last 20 years making sure that that childcare industry has what they need to weather any storm. And with the development of new things coming into society, just making sure they have what they need in terms of support for their businesses as well.
So do you focus on areas that are going through some kind of a disaster recovery or emergency preparedness, and you try to go boots on the ground to help childcare centers and other education organizations have the resources they need? Or just tell us a little bit more about how you actually do provide this support.
Yeah, so most notably, folks will see us boots on the ground. And what we've found in the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years, especially out of COVID, is folks need our support remotely, especially childcare. They need us to be at our desks fundraising, getting them those funds to recover. So we are not physically boots on the ground. We leave that space for life-saving entities. And we really focus on preparedness throughout the year. So again, lots of training, technical assistance, getting the word out on how to prepare for storms, especially in those hurricane-prone regions. And then once an event happens, we reach out to childcare providers, childcare resource entities, early education organizations, as many people in that area or network as possible, and really work on pointing them in the right direction of where to get funds, how to get funds, what they're eligible for, and really start letting them take ownership in their recovery, and then bridging them into longer term resiliency. And so we do that year round. Our primary focus right now is the Gulf Coast group. But we have, this past year we deployed to Hawaii to help with the wildfires. We've gone to
Hmm.
the East Coast, anywhere. So we just want to make sure that every childcare provider has what they need, before, during, and after an emergency.
Oh, that's cool. Um, what are some of the key critical actions that a childcare center can take to prepare? And I'm assuming this is, so yeah, you mentioned fires, hurricanes, tornadoes, storm systems, surge
Yep.
waves. I mean, all it really runs the gamut, right? So,
Yeah.
to help us understand a little bit more about on the preparation side, what are some things that you teach and train us to do?
Yeah. So we teach our childcare folks that emergency preparedness is embedded in your business plan. It's got to be in there. um,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah, that's the first step.
Yeah.
And when we, talk to providers about that, they're a little shocked sometimes, and we're like, no, that's where it has to be. If your bottom line is your bottom line, and you got to make sure that you have a really good, stable plan for that. So we teach them about making sure that they have the right preparations, that they are financially prepared to take on an emergency, whether that's insurance, whether that is looking at supports in the local area, knowing what they're eligible for at the federal level. That's really
Mm.
important.
Hmm.
And making a plan, right? We know that they do their monthly plan, licensing comes, checks it, but really that plan goes beyond just the practical and the tactical. It's really embedding those pieces into their business modules, making sure that they have those rainy day funds if possible. And if not, what goals are they working towards to have that? Because you will be surprised to know that after a disaster, if it's federally declared, for-profit childcare providers are not eligible for FEMA funding. And that is shocking.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So we let them know at the onset in our preparedness training, you have to be aware that, if you're a for-profit provider, FEMA's not going to be there to sort of provide that extra assistance. So what can we do throughout the year in your business plan to embed that in there? How can we make room for that? What networks or resources do you need to be reaching out to? Is it going to a business summit? Is it having someone look at your books, but really making sure they understand the financial component of a disaster or an emergency, because it is a financial burden on most providers.
Hmm. Well, that's an interesting stat about the for profit, which is, I mean, a good chunk of our listeners, this
Right.
audience is a for profit and not getting that FEMA funding. So, yeah, having it embedded in your business plan is super smart. I mean, we've talked in the past on this podcast about best practices in insurance coverage, as well as having a crisis preparedness plan, like actually having emergency or crisis plan that's part of your operations manual that you train all of your team members, whether they're teachers or leaders or support staff.
Right.
Everybody needs to know the plan and have training on it. And also it needs to be up to date. So you can just go grab it, right? And you can manage from it and really use it to lead you out of this crisis. So
Absolutely. Yep.
those are some thoughts and some best practices there, guys. If you're listening to this and you don't have that, it's time to take action and go build that. Militza, tell us more about the Gulf Coast Resilience Network. What is that?
Yes. We are so proud of them at Save the Children, and we do so much work with them throughout the year. So, what we decided to do about, gosh, 3, 4 years ago, is we started compiling data of how many emergencies have we responded to, who's getting our information, and so we compiled this group of 10 early ed organizations, childcare resource and referral agencies. Basically, if you're a hub agency serving childcare, come into this network. We meet every 6 to 8 weeks, 6 weeks during height of hurricane season since we're in the Gulf, but 8 weeks off season. And we resource share. We talk about best practices. We train on Save the Children's emergency training, and then they go out and train their childcare providers. So we have training of trainer modules that they attend.
Mm,
Um, and we've seen some really great statistics and resiliency come out of this group. So they spend year round championing, working, goal setting, and really advocating for the needs of childcare providers in the disaster space, which is a really niche area when we think of childcare. And this group, again, it's Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, Florida, and anybody else on the Gulf Coast that wants to join, we're more than willing to have some more folks come advocate. And we get together once a year. This past year, we met here in Galveston, Texas, and we make sure we're up to date on what is, coming down the pipeline from the federal government. Have those rules changed yet? Maybe one day we'll get them to change.
Right.
Um, and again, a lot of that is resource sharing. People will be so surprised to know that providers in Tennessee have the same problems, as providers in Hawaii or providers in Texas, when it talks about disasters and how to overcome. And so a lot of that resource and knowledge sharing is really great. And we've seen, one of our organizations in Miami, their CEO come talk to the CEO of a CCR&R in Louisiana, and really starting having that really good mind meld of how do we get them to start turning around and paying attention to natural disasters and the climate infrastructure that's coming with it. Like we just said, it's hot in Texas right now, so kids are not able to go outside and play. What is that going to do to development, and how as a business can we start wrapping services around that and supporting children, because again, first and foremost, we're in childcare because we love it, but we are a business and we want to make sure we're providing the best in class services. So lots of good information, lots of resource sharing, and we love for childcare providers, in the Gulf Coast to come join this group, and really advocate for those needs. And it goes beyond sort of the natural disasters. If it's, we've seen some community violence come in. So what can we do when we need to talk about safety of facilities in our buildings? So we're having a lot of good talks. And again, these are just really good champions for that intersection between childcare and emergencies.
Hmm. Love that. I'm interested historically, since you've been around I had no idea that you've been around for over 100 years. I mean, that's incredible. And back then, of course, in the 1920s, we didn't have childcare. That
Right.
didn't exist. So I'm just curious, what was the original mission, or how have things morphed over the decades? I don't know if you have any of that information, but if this organization was built 100 years ago, was it originally to help just underprivileged children, underprivileged families, foster kids?
Yeah.
But tell me more about the origination of it. I'm just
Yeah,
curious. It's cool.
great question. So we started, a long time ago, and our founder, Egmaltine Jeb, she saw a need for children who were roaming the streets, impoverished, didn't have homes, experienced war. And that's how Save the Children got started. And domestically, it's just morphed into how can we make sure children are healthy, safe, and thriving, whether they're, overseas, but really domestically here. That's our mission, is to make sure, specifically in that education space, 0 to 5 and K through 6th grade, focusing on making sure they're reading at grade level proficiency, making sure that they are kindergarten ready. And then the other thing that we do that is most important thing that's connected to childcare is those mental health components. What components do teachers, children need as they're navigating this world? And so we have a great team that comes in, after emergencies and talks to families, providers about what are those supports are you going to need after a disaster. Um, and so, yeah, we do education, we do mental health supports, for children, and really focusing on those holistic needs of children, as they're navigating life and growing up, because they're going to be the next workforce, right? And so we want to make sure that they have good, solid foundations.
Yeah. Cool. I love that. Um, are all 50 states and the CCR&Rs in all 50 states able to tap into you guys, or just more so the states that are just more disaster prone?
Yeah, great question. So our vision and goal is to have, another Gulf Coast group replication. And so we are looking at an East Coast and a West Coast and a Midwest group to encompass all 50 states, to make sure that this advocacy and this intersection is really, really at the forefront. And we do deploy, my team and we deploy. I mean, we were just in Hawaii, we've been in Florida,
Right.
you name it, we go. If there's a federally declared disaster and the childcare infrastructure needs help, we will be there to
Okay.
support, training resources, mental health supports, financial supports. And that's really, I think, where we are known for best here, in emergencies, is we do provide recovery funding for childcare providers.
Okay. Even if they're for profit.
Yes, yes, we don't discriminate against that. We have a full-fledged, realm of what childcare looks like. We will even fund unlicensed childcare. We want to make sure that if there's a kid in care and that
Sure.
provider needs help, and that's the safest place for that child to be, that they have what they need so that child can continue to grow and learn and thrive. We want to make sure we're mitigating that learning loss because we've seen, providers go down for 3, 6 months. Well, where do those kids go in the interim? And so we want to make sure that we're able to get the funding out. They can get back learning as quickly as possible.
Okay, awesome. Well, speaking of that, how do you get your funding? Are you comprised of both private and public sources of funding and donations and donors, and or how do you guys get funded?
Yeah, so we have our Children's Emergencies Fund that sits year round. And so that's a lot of private donors. We do have some foundations that donate. It's just a myriad and a hybrid of private donors,
Sure.
philanthropic donors year round. And so we always say if you want to donate to save the children, go to our Children's Emergencies Fund on our website. And that sits up year round. And that is where we pull from our dollars to make sure that we can fund childcare recovery. That is something that is really critical to us. We've done a lot of research the last 20 years in this. And again, really, really looking at childcare is critical. It's the core of everything.
Mhm.
2017's Hurricane Harvey decimated, all the way from Corpus Christi to Houston. And there was so much research that came out. And again, if childcare didn't get back up and going within like 30 to 45 days, that economy would have collapsed because
Yep.
you're talking doctors, road workers, anybody that was trying to help the system get back would have collapsed. And so just getting that advocacy out there too is really important to us. So we're just, in
Yes.
terms of recovery, a lot of it is education, right? Just sharing this information out to folks. So
Mhm.
I know FEMA says that, in the Stafford Act that says about emergencies, that talks to us about what that specific language is. It says childcare is critical but not essential. But we know childcare is essential. And so one day when that language changes, then childcare providers will be able to get FEMA funding. And we do have an advocacy branch at the state and federal level at SAVE, who do lobby for things like that. And so any awareness and information we have, we try to gather to bring that up to those powers that be to impact that change and to one day change that one word so we can get federal.
Yes. Yeah, and I love the advocacy component. It always shocks me when we have conversations with legislators, whether they're state or federal level legislators, lawmakers, and they don't really put the dots together, connect the dots on childcare and economy. That if parents can't have stable, high quality childcare, they're not going to work and our
Right.
economy will collapse. And then when you finally paint that picture, you see the light bulb go off, but I think we all need to just take this as a reminder, guys. We all need to be advocating and reminding our legislators of this because yeah, it's shocking to me sometimes that um, that there's that lack of connection between the two things. So thanks for bringing that up. That's great. Now let's talk about the mental and emotional well-being. You mentioned that's a really important piece for the social emotional wellness of children to be part of this mission and part of all of our thinking and teaching teachers how to help children navigate crises, navigate disasters, or just general life. And so talk a little bit more about some ways that early learning businesses can help support that better, can help dive in to maybe getting more training or just getting more resources around mental and emotional well-being for children.
Absolutely. So what we've seen is after a disaster specifically, whether that's like a community violence situation or a natural disaster, the rush is to get back up into your business, get up and going, the kids are safe. And then we forget about our teachers, right? So they themselves may have just experienced this disaster. And then they're going into a classroom and then we're asking them to continue facilitation of learning. But what if they're not ready? What if
Mhm.
they themselves are struggling? We have to prioritize the teachers and our providers' mental health. It's very important. And so, what we do throughout the year is we have trainings, we have resources, um, and we train our owners and directors because they're the decision makers, right? We train them on how to check in with your staff and allowing
Cool.
them staff to say, I'm not ready to go back into this classroom because they themselves, again, if a hurricane blows through, they may be at, the local shelter because their house was destroyed. Yet we're asking them to go into this classroom and be that strong teacher and take care of those kids. So we do a lot of training for our owners and directors on how to take those cues and how to check in with your staff to make sure that they are okay. What are those key points? What are those triggers we need to look for to ensure they're ready? And then we also teach our teachers, hey, if you're not ready to go in that classroom, I know we need to get into that classroom and teach those kids and make sure they're safe. But what are some cues that you can look to yourself of like, hey, you know what? I may be able to tackle this today, but I may not be able to get to this in terms of, maybe it's after schoolers or, you need to change rooms and you're in the infant room, but you're used to the pre-K room. We teach those teachers to have those self-awareness, those self-cues of what do I need to check with myself and how do I know I'm not okay? And then where to go to, how to advocate for that with your owner or director. And then where to go to in the community if you do need those extra mental health supports. And we've seen a lot of success in that. It's a big topic that we train on every year. And in that, we also have a module for families. So how to talk to kids about disasters, how to prepare children for, who experience big major events, but then it rains and they're really scared to even get out of the car to go to school. How to talk to them and prepare them year round about it's going to happen, but you're going to be safe. There's trusted adults around you. We're going to make sure that you're okay, but it is going to rain again. We don't have to be afraid of the water. And so that sort of holistic wraparound we've really seen a lot of good results of that in building our teachers' resiliency and our children's resiliency. And we know when our teachers are ready and calm, then our children will be ready and calm. And then together they can facilitate, advantageous learning and quality learning because we've done the mental health work, we've done the hard part. And so we're really proud of that. And we've seen a lot of good come out of those trainings and getting teachers and families ready to go back into centers.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So dozens of clients that I've worked with over the years and that are listening to this podcast have actually lived through that experience, that, complete disaster, whether I've got folks in my organization that are coaching with us that have had multiple floods, have had roofs blown off the building, have had tornadoes completely flatten their building. It's crazy what actually happens. And in those cases, they've all been able to successfully relocate their families within a 48-hour period. They find some facility and they move everybody, and then they go to the hard work of contacting insurance and getting their facility completely rebuilt or repaired. And so do you guys provide those relocation services for folks, or are you in touch with, if somebody's facing that situation, like, do you have any ideas, tips, best practices for how to go about locating that kind of a facility, or any like different networking, tips for people to try to, because you got to get the word out there ASAP to try to find some place that you can relocate all your families to. So have you gone through that, or do you have any tips around that situation?
Yeah, in terms of relocation for families, we always tell our families when there's a disaster, the Red Cross is going to be, a really good resource. But in terms of relocating for childcare and buildings,
Yeah.
We want to make sure that our childcare providers really, really reach out to those childcare resource and referral agencies because they're going to have that information.
Right.
And if we have anything in the community that we hear about, we will share that out with our resource and referral agencies as well.
Cool.
So we sort of put the APB out of like, here's who you go to. And best practices. And so again, with our Gulf Coast network, they have that information ready on hand of like, okay, we know this location, they've already scouted and they have that in their plans as well. So
Cool.
yeah, it's tricky because again, you have to get your licensing and you're trying to open really quickly and
Right.
it's very complicated. But our first rule of thumb that we tell providers is if you are hit by a disaster, go to your insurance. Your insurance is going to be your first step.
Yes.
If you're a nonprofit or a home provider, then you can apply for FEMA assistance, get your FEMA assistance.
Okay.
If you're a for-profit provider, and this is the tricky thing that we teach at, we have a training on this called How to Access Funding. Our for-profit providers have to apply for FEMA, take their rejection letter, and go to the SBA.
Oh, wow.
Yes. That process is a little wonky, but we tell them like, bear with us on this. Once they go to the SBA, that's when some other really cool things happen for our providers. That's where either other philanthropic funds will sit, so then they can get grants that they may not have to pay back. And we want to flood our providers to that arena. So we're like, apply for FEMA. We know you'll get rejected, but
Yeah.
take the rejection letter, float it to the SBA, and
Mhm.
then find those other philanthropic funds that you may not have to pay back, grants, other programs, and potentially loan assistance. And so we want our providers to go through that route in that process.
Wow. So that is a huge writer downer, guys. That was gold right there to have that in your back pocket. And if you don't know how to find your CCR&R, and I say this all the time because so many providers, they're like, what's that? I'm like, so go to childcareaware, AWARE.org, and type your zip code in, and there's a agency, there is an office somewhere near you in your region to help you with the situation. So contact them, but call your insurance first and just go through the process that Militza just took us through. That was a huge gem for what and to get some philanthropic funding from the SBA. Like that's amazing. So I
Yes.
love that.
Yeah, and we've
Cool.
seen, and so we train on this. It's a 1 hour training. We either do it in person, webinar style. We have a guidebook that comes with it, so it walks you through all these steps and what you need to do. And when we've trained on this, we've seen some really good success stories. So I know providers are like, we don't want to go to SBA. We don't need to take on a loan. We can't take on a loan. Whatever your business practices, it's worth sitting with them and figuring out what are some of those options.
Yeah.
And we had one provider when we were training in Austin last year, um, applied, took out a $90,000 loan, was a good steward, paid the first $10,000, and then they forgave $80,000 of that loan because
Wow.
of it, because she was doing what she needed to do. She had a strong business plan. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. These are great resources, great strategies. Thank you so much, Militza. How can people learn more about Save the Children? Because I think people need to go check out your training, take your webinars, and also I would love to see people fundraise. Lots of fundraising going on at the community level with parents, and kids are doing cool things to run to community to raise funds for community give back projects. So don't forget about Save the Children on your community give back, guys, because this is an important one. So how can people learn more?
Sure, absolutely. You can go to savechildren.org. On there, you'll see the Children's Emergencies Fund, and it talks about what we do with that fund. It's an open fund year round. So if you want to donate to emergencies, that's what it will go to. And that's where we pull from to support the childcare infrastructure domestically. When we do have emergencies, that's what it goes to. And again, if a provider needs, a fence fixed, we can fix the fence. If they need materials, we can get materials to them. And so we just want to make sure that providers know that there is a branch out there that they can reach out to if they do need assistance post disaster. And then additionally, for our childcare audience, all of our trainings and materials are 100% cost free. We never
Oh,
charge
wow.
for our trainings, and we do them year round. So we've been everywhere, all over, hybrid style, virtual. But we make sure that our providers are not burdened by cost or anything.
Cool. I'd love to have you guys come and have a booth at the summit.
Yeah, we would love that. We would
Yeah.
absolutely love that.
Cool. Yeah, let's get some more information out there. This is great information. This has been an awesome episode and conversation with you, Militza. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to share all this great information with our audience. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we close it down?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I just want providers to know that it's not a matter of if it'll happen. At Save the Children, we say when it happens. And so that
Yeah.
will be prepared. So take care of your planning, make sure it's in your business portfolio, make sure you have good, strong planning. That way you are prepared and you'll be more resilient.
Yes. Love that. 100%. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been an amazing episode and content, and everybody needs to go take action on what you've learned today. And Militza, thank you so much again. Thanks everybody for tuning in to Childcare Rockstar Radio, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
I hope you liked this episode of Childcare Rockstar Radio. If you did,
Please leave a review and share it with someone you know to help spread the word to friends in our industry and on social media. Childcare business success is my passion, and I'm honored to be on this journey with you. As a thank you for listening, I've got a new video training that shows you how to add 6 figures or more of new revenue to your program in the next 60 days by improving your hiring and your enrollment systems. To watch my new video, just go to www.fixmyschool.com. That's fixmyschool.com. Thanks. Take care and God bless.